Creator and sustainer of all things and all people, you are the source of all wisdom and light. Enlighten our minds to receive your guidance, so that we may lead us into true wisdom. May all that we say and do in the service of this county, whether as elected member or as an officer, be in accordance with your will and for the good of your people. Amen. Right, just a few brief comments before we start the meeting. First of all, to welcome you all here to the racecourse. It has rather an attractive backdrop, particularly where I'm sitting at the moment. I believe we may be back in our own home, what we call our home county hall, in September, so we'll have journeyed around a little bit, so we look forward to that. Evacuation procedures. In the event of having to evacuate, officers will be able to advise and be on hand to assist any people with disabilities. Mobile phones, we say it all the time, but it's essential because some people do forget. May ask all members who have a mobile phone with them to ensure that they've switched off so they will not disturb this meeting. Right, we move on now, members, to agenda item 1, the Chairman's announcements. It is with great sadness I report the death of former County Councillor Mr John Thomas. He served on the County Council representing the Rushmead electoral division from 1994 to 1997. Following the reorganisation of local government in 1997, he served as a member of Leicestershire City Council. Mr Thomas served as a member of the Police, Education, Public Protection, Planning, Recreation and Arts, Libraries, Museums Committee. Would all members please join me by standing in silent tribute to Mr Thomas. Thank you all very much indeed. Thank you. Right, members, we move on to item number 2 of the minutes, page 5 to 14. I would like to formally move the minutes of the meeting of the Council held on the 19th of May 2021, copies which have been circulated to members, taken as read and confirmed and signed. I'd like to call on Dr Feltham to second, please.
Seconded, Chair.
Thank you. Right, item number 3 on our agenda is to invite members who wish to do so to make declarations of interest in respect of items on the agenda for this meeting. I assume that all members who are also members of district councils will wish to declare a personal interest in the notice of motion. Are there any declarations of interest? Yes, please.
Chair, I'd like to declare an interest on the qualities position statement as a trustee of a community.
Thank you very much. Yes, no. Anybody else, please? Yes. Would you stand up? Thank you. Noted. Thank you very much for that. Thank you. Right, thank you for that. We move on now to agenda item 4, questions asked under standing order. Question and reply set out in the order paper will be taken as read and entered into the minutes. Mrs Hack, I believe you may have a supplementary question.
Thank you for the response, and I look forward to seeing the information in due course on the Safe Streets. What does we continue to promote the development of school travel plans mean? Is the County Council actively involved in the development of school travel plans? If so, please could we have some more information? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor O'Shea.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you for your question. I will look into the... It isn't working now.
Yeah.
Both have a trial.
The slide button.
Better. Yeah, there you go. I've drowned you out now. Thank you, Mrs. Hack, for your question, and I'll make sure you get a written reply to your question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, so now we move on, members, through our agenda. Item number 5, to receive the position statements from members of Cabinet. The Leader will now invite the Leader to make his position statement. Please, Leader.
Brought my phone with me. Thank you, Chairman. Welcome to Leicester Racecourse. I think on reflection it's a slightly better venue for us than it was at Loughborough University, certainly a better view, and hopefully we'll be back at County Hall in September. We'll try and not delay everyone too long, obviously, because we've got the England match on later, so we need to be all set up ready for that. Normally I'd be wishing Peter Schmeichel his best ever day in goals, but today I don't think I'll be doing that. But on with the business. I'll try and not just read it out because you've all got it or downloaded it. So, Police and Crime Commissioner, congratulations to Rupert on being elected as the Police and Crime Commissioner. I think he spent 3 years trying to be it, and then the elections were postponed, etc. So I'm happy that he has finished, and I'm very happy that he won. For the record, I wish him good luck. As you know, when Willie was in the job, I got on perfectly well with Willie. He was just an opposition party, so I feel confident that I'll get on even better with Rupert once he gets his feet under the table. Deborah and I have already met with him, and since meeting with him, Deborah has now been elected chairman of the Police and Crime Panel, which again will help us in our relationships with Rupert. We discussed, as it says in the document, mutual interest, Leicestershire families, domestic violence, rural crime, stuff like that. On the East Midlands Global Gateway, which used to be just called Freeport, you'll be aware from the recent report to Cabinet that the government approved the expression of interest, and we are working very, very hard on it. It's difficult, it's laborious. We've engaged expensive consultants who are doing a lot of the work. We will get the money back from the government, but at the moment it is difficult to make progress. But I'm hopeful we'll make progress. We've now appointed an independent chair, which is a lady who used to be chief executive of the East Midlands Airport years ago. A lot of you will know her. Her name's Penny Coates. For instance, Pam knows her from way, way back when she was in work for Pedigree Pet Foods in Melton Mowbray. So she's a good woman. I know her from when she was at East Midlands Airport. Obviously, we've got to help Leicestershire with the Freeport. We get North West Leicestershire on there, so another member of the Cabinet sits on the Freeport board, and that's Robert Ashman, the Deputy Leader at North West. This will help us make sure that we ensure that the benefits that come with the Freeport accrue equally to Leicestershire, Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire, because they must not forget that it is our airport and it is in North West Leicestershire. Linked to this, I have a meeting with Ben Bradley. Some of you guys will know him, some won't. He's the new elected leader of Nottinghamshire, and he's also very, very useful because, as you know, he's a Conservative MP for Mansfield, so he was one of the very early so-called red wall seats that the Conservatives won, so he seems to have excellent connections with government because he was one of the very first seats, not this election when we won a lot, but the previous election. Ben was one of the few red wall seats that we won, so it's very useful to be friends with him. I have driven up with the chief to Nottingham to meet him. He's very keen on regional matters. He can see the disadvantages that the region, when I say the region, the East Midlands has compared to the West Midlands. He's keen on getting a decision on HS2, which is still pending. I think ultimately it'll come down to a political decision by the Prime Minister on whether or not he goes ahead with it. But if it's coming, my view is we should have the whole lot, not just something that finishes at Parkway, which is one huge floodplain anyway. So we'll see what happens there. He's keen on the Freeport, and he's keen on the levelling up agenda. So we're all trying to feed documents in on levelling up. And as you guys also know, Neil O'Brien is writing a policy document in number 10 on the levelling up agenda. So he's in a very influential position. He's also leading for us on the fair funding campaign. So Neil is doing the, say, the back work, obviously supported by our senior finance guys here. And then Andrew Bridgen is championing it as a member. So they've already got all the Leicestershire MPs signed up. And because the fair funding bid, although not all encompassing, because we've been told if we go for fair funding for all, it's just too much for the government to fund. So we've type of designed a thing that helps the 20 lowest funded authorities. Now, they're not all Conservative. There are Labour ones, and there are even some Liberal ones. So we're hoping to get a cross-party bunch of MPs to sign the letter to give in to Rishi to see if we can actually achieve some money for us. Because as you know, and I know you Liberal guys make fun of me every time, we have been trying for a very long time. We were even trying for fair funding when you were in coalition with us and did no good. But I'm confident with a more targeted bid, we may be successful. I think we certainly would have been successful had we not got COVID. But you know, the government's finances are in a bit of a mess, which we'll see when it comes to the statement later this year. But we've got to keep pushing on it. It's unfair, really, when you look at the money that other counties get. And, you know, I'm not saying we're dirt poor and we're really deprived, but it's really, really unfair, the lack of resources that we do receive as a county compared to our peers in the country. The tree strategy, so we're really proud of this. It was in our manifesto. We've got to get on with it. We're going to have 400,000 ash trees die, for one thing, so we need to replant those. And you can see we pledged 700,000 trees, type of one for every resident. I'm very keen on it. I've tasked Blake, will be leading on it as our green champion. I've told him if there's any blockages or things that need unblocking by the leadership is to come to me. But we're very keen on the tree strategy. Finally, the COVID memorial walk. I went there on the 21st of June with SPS. It was good. The idea for the memorial walk wasn't mine. I don't want to take credit for it. It was Pam's when she was chairman. So Pam attended as a previous chairman. The chairman obviously attended. There was dozens of individuals and businesses there. And I think it's the sort of thing that we should do. So we've planted these 58 trees. It's approximately 3-mile route. It links the city and the countryside because although we're kind of proud of the bit in this county and the city are proud of the bit that's in the city, when you remember the public visiting Watermead, you don't really care which authority's park it is. What we want is to make it a really nice place for people to go and for people that have been bereaved to go and walk along a route and think about their loss. Because we need to remember, as it says in the report, we've had 2,400 people die in Leicester and Leicestershire. And I think a memorial walk will be more of a lasting tribute to the dead and the people who've had bereaved people. So we're moving out of lockdown, so we're all going to be released on the 19th. I think we need to remember that it's not over. We still have a virus out there. I think we'll be having the virus out there forever and a day. It'll just be like the flu or whatever. But I would say to you, and I certainly will, when I go into shops, I will still continue to wear a mask and things like that, and you know, make an effort not to sit too close to people who I don't know or people that have come from another city or another town. But I think the Prime Minister is right. We do now need to move on. I'm not disputing what he's doing, but I think we all need to be careful, and I'm sure when Michael comes up to speak as Leader of the Opposition, he'll endorse those. So thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you. Could I call now Mr Mullaney, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the leader for his statement. I also welcome in post the new PCC. The previous PCC, Lord Bart, was from another party, but I think everybody from all parties universally welcomed the way in which he worked and cooperated with people across parties and the very collegiate way in which he worked, and I hope we can see a similar way forward with the new PCC as well, who I've attended meetings with. In terms of the tree strategy, we welcome that and hope that it will be delivered. In terms of the COVID Memorial Park, it's a tragedy that 2,400 individuals in Leicester and Leicestershire passed away with COVID as a possible cause, and those are 2,400 deaths are tragedies for the individuals concerned and for their families. So I welcome the fact that we have this as a way of memorialising their passing away, and I endorse the comments of the leader about the need to take precautions as we emerge from the lockdowns in terms of preventing further spreading of the virus, and hopefully the worst of it is beyond us. In terms of fair funding, as we know, Leicestershire is the worst funded county in the country, and residents realise this through the high level of council tax that they pay from through the county element, including a large rise this year, and the continual pressure on many of the services that the county provides due to the lack of funding. And the administration in the statement, it was disappointing that it sounded like that there was a lack of confidence that fair funding would be achieved, and whilst we would welcome an overall increase in government spending on local government, firstly, that probably doesn't seem very likely, but even if it does happen, it doesn't address the fact that as being the lowest funded county in the country, we should have an increase in spending, not just in line with a general increase across the country, but specifically for us in order to get off the bottom of the table in terms of funding. And what we want to see from fair funding is Leicestershire well off the bottom of the table, not just to address the fact that it's the worst funded now, but has been for years, and that will have had cumulative effects in terms of lack of funding for the county. So what we want to see is, yes, overall an increase in government spending for local government, which has been really starved of resources over the years, but also specifically we want to see action to see Leicestershire rise up the table in terms of funding, so it's no longer the worst funded in the country, because it's what people in this county deserve. So thank you.
Thank you. Now could I call Mrs. Hack, please? The mic is on.
Okay, Leah can reach it this time. Thank you, Leader, for your position statement. Obviously also welcome the new Police and Crime Commissioner to Leicestershire. I obviously have to place on record my thanks to Lord Willie Back, who not only was the Police and Crime Commissioner, but a really close colleague and friend. So thank you for the work that Willie did. In terms of fair funding, I mean, I think that there's definitely been a bit of a fair funding theme that's been going on throughout the whole time that I've been a county councillor. And the frustration that we feel here in Leicestershire is one that we see at every council meeting. If we're able to level up Leicestershire and get the funding that we need, clearly that will go to our most vulnerable communities. I think when we talk about fairness, though, we can't forget the issues that we have with regards to the unfairness of how much each child gets in terms of their education and the finances. We're also low funded there too. So I just feel when we talk about fairness, we need to also talk about inequality and inequality of our communities, and I think that those things can't be severed. With regards to the tree strategy, obviously it was in the Conservative manifesto, but Labour motion put that forward and put that in train. So I'm really pleased to see the progress made. And I'm, as was mentioned at the last council meeting, Blake's got his work cut out to get 700,000 delivered. So good luck, and we'll be there to support you. With regards to the COVID Memorial Walk, I really look forward to going to go and visiting now that it's open. I was due to go last night, but we had a joint health scrutiny committee meeting, so I couldn't go. I think one of the things that certainly we will have to contend with going forward is how people feel and their overwhelming sadness that some families and some communities have felt throughout the pandemic. It certainly isn't over, The 19th of July is a step forward, but I think we need to step forward with caution. So concur with the comments that the leader brought forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Now, members, it's your chance if anybody wants to speak or comment. This will be through all of these. You must put your hand up so I can clearly see. Yes, please, at the back. David, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, that's Welsh.
Thank you, Chairman. The tree cover in the county, this came before the Scrutiny Commission. I think it must have been before the pandemic struck.
It was, yeah.
But it received total and unanimous support across the committee. But one point that we put forward was, could we look again at the boundaries of the National Forest? Now, I was here when the National Forest was promoted and agreed, and it really was a very arbitrary line drawn, really, with a felt-tip pen, just to link the two forests, Needwood and Charnwood. And it's always struck me that really it was like so many lines on a map. They seem to stick forever. But could we just look, could I just ask whether the leadership and the officers could look again at whether the potential for extending the National Forest beyond its existing boundaries, even if it's in the form of a community forest or just additional tree planting, because the benefits to be gained from it are immense. And I think it would be to the advantage of everybody. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Right, could I call Mr. Walsh, please? Welsh, sorry. Oh, glasses back on.
Sorry about the speech, Chairman.
No, don't worry.
The knees are failing fast.
Yeah, don't worry.
In terms of fair funding, I thought that both the leader and the leader of the opposition's comments are very pertinent, and the idea that there's a backlog effect through the lack of fair funding. And so, for example, one of the things that concern me is the Cabinet proposals to remove 0.5% of the General Schools Fund to fund the gap in SEN. And there's an example of consequences to long-term lack of fair funding. And that will have, although it doesn't sound a lot, 0.5%, in terms of school budgets, I'm sure all of us who are school governors will worry about those consequences. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. I'd like to now call Mr. Payne. Thank you.
Is this on? Yes.
Yes,
so, Council, first of all, can I say what a pleasure it is to be in South Leicestershire. It's only a stone's throw away from where I live, just up the A6, so it makes a nice change after 10 or 12 years being on the County Council to travel this side to a meeting. And can I thank the leader for his leader's statement. I'm going to speak to the tree strategy section as indeed the leader has tasked me with delivering the 700,000 trees. And I'm going to try to answer Mr. Bill's question. In terms of the objective, it will be challenging. We've spoke about it before, but there'll be no greater legacy for this council, in my opinion, than improving the environment here in Leicestershire, particularly by making sure that we've got far better tree cover than we currently have. Can I assure Mr. Bill that the next step of our journey is to devise a tree charter, which we're in the process of doing. We're revising our tree action plan to make sure that we can accommodate 700,000 trees and actually deliver them. But our tree charter will be developed in partnership with the National Forest, and we'll sign that in due course and make sure that is the blueprint by which we deliver this ambition to plant another 700,000 trees, one for each resident of Leicestershire throughout the county. It is a huge challenge, one that I'm up for, and one that I'm extremely proud that the administration have taken on board and determined to see delivered to. Thank you.
Thank you. Now at this point, I'd like to call the leader if he wishes to respond to any of the comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. In reply first in the order of the speakers to Michael, Well, the idea of the new bid is to type of put a floor under the lowest funded. So we will move off the bottom, and even if we still end up at the bottom, so long as the quantum of money we get is higher than being in the cellar. So my idea is to get us out of the cellar and at least on the ground floor. So that's why it's type of an easier bid for the government to swallow, because to level everybody up to say the likes of Islington is like 5-6 billion. Now we're never going to get 5-6 billion, but if we can say there should be a floor, we reckon it costs 300 million, which is, even if they phase it over 2 years, you know, in my view, is eminently achievable. So that is the idea with the new bid. Amanda, I hear what you say about the inequalities and on schools funding. And the reason we've had to go, again to Jeff as well, why we've had to go back to the schools to say can they afford to take a couple of million hit out of their, I think it's 90 million budget, is the fact that our SEN overspend by the end of this council will be £40 million, and it's just a debt that the government says we park. Now, in accounting terms, it's unsustainable. You know, it'll just sit there. We cannot have 40 million sat just on one side as a debt. So the schools probably will vote against giving us the 2 million, but we need to ask them because we need them to see the scale of the problem. And I think ultimately the Secretary of State will have to decide whether or not they give us the 2 million. But we cannot go on letting the SEN grow and grow and grow. You know, 40 million is a very big number. In some counties, though, to be fair, it's a lot bigger. But it's still a big number for this county. And then briefly to Davidville on the National Forest. I've got areas I represent that are always wanting the National Forest extending. Wherever you go, people say, oh, it finishes over there, why can't it come here? And in all honesty, I think we'll be banging our heads against the wall trying to persuade the National Forest to extend its boundaries, is what my view, having spoke to them about it, is. But what we want is trees. We don't necessarily want extensions to forests. What I want to see is urban trees. So when you go into the middle of Colville or the middle of Melton Mowbray, where there's bits of land and that, where the housing estates are, we want to put trees in those sort of areas. So I want to see rural trees, I want to see urban trees, I want to see the ash trees replaced, not just extensions to forests. So Blake is tasked with it. I think it'll be possibly beyond us to achieve in 4 years, but he has certainly targeted him with it. And I promise you guys here, we will do our utmost to deliver. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Could I move on now to lead member for children and families, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll first start with SEN provision. So over the last 3 years, we've invested £30 million of capital to deliver nearly 500 new places for children with special educational needs and disabilities in Leicestershire. I won't go through all the variety of those places that we've produced. They're already in the position statement for you to have a look at, but you can see there's a vast array of different provision that we've provided that covers all children within Leicestershire. Further developments are planned for the forthcoming year to continue to develop high quality local provision to meet the needs of children with special education needs and disabilities in Leicestershire. On to unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. I'm sure you're well aware of the information that you probably see in the news and see on the telly, but I'm pleased to inform members that Leicestershire has agreed to join the voluntary National Transfer Scheme for unaccompanied asylum-seeker children. The new scheme will introduce a rota across the East Midlands where unaccompanied asylum-seeking children who arrive on the South Coast will be placed in accommodation and supported by local authorities across the region. The County Council will take 5 children a year from the rota. In addition to this, the County Council will also be taking 3 unaccompanied asylum seekers immediately to support the critical position that Kent is currently in due to the number of children who have arrived and are currently in Kent and urgently need placing in accommodation with support provided for them. On to our foster carers. As members will be aware, the Council has 112 in-house foster carers who provide a home and care for our children in care and 35 supported living providers who provide a home for our care leavers. Over the last 18 months, these carers have gone above and beyond to provide for our children and young people over the pandemic. This has included taking on additional responsibilities such as homeschooling, managing contact virtually with children's families, and supporting them through this in addition to maintaining face-to-face contact where it's been safe to do. I would like to take this opportunity to express my dear thanks to our foster carers and specialist carers for all they've done over the pandemic for our children. Our fostering service not only provides high quality support and training to our foster carers, but they also work hard to recruit new carers. Over the past year, despite COVID, the team has successfully recruited an additional 13 foster families. Leicestershire Fostering Service is unique that it also recruits and supports our in-house supported lodging scheme, recruiting a further 11 carers despite COVID. Another initiative that is supporting a recruitment of foster carers is A Place to Call Home. This is a joint project of the 9 East Midlands Council, and this council leads on that project. This aims to place unaccompanied asylum-seeking children in homes in the county in which they arrive. The project came about following the growing recognition that a lot of these young people ended up in placements at a distance from the local authority and social workers who care for them. I'm pleased to announce that the project currently has 20 carers in assessment, hopefully due for final approval in August and September. And this project does need to do more carers to come forward to provide homes for unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. On to The Voice. In autumn 2020, the Children and Families Department launched the Voice and Influence strategy that evidenced the department's commitment to putting children and young people at the heart of all its activities through involving them and their families in the decision-making, planning, commissioning, design, development and delivery of services that affect their daily lives. The strategy was developed and influenced by feedback from the children and young people themselves. Over the last year, the department has continued to engage with and seek the views of children and young people, and whilst the COVID-19 pandemic has presented some real challenge to participation work across the department, it's also offered some new opportunities to engage children and young people in very different ways. From this engagement activity, we know there's been a number of positives that children and young people have experienced during the lockdown, as well as a significant amount of challenges, most notably practical issues such as accessing dentists and other services, and the impact of feeling of isolation and increased concerns about mental health. Children in care have been involved in the development of a contact expectation statement and a review of arrangements expectation statement to improve the experiences of our children who have contact with their birth families and participate in their review of arrangements meetings. They've also been involved in work to develop residential and fostering provision and developing referral information used by all social workers for residential and fostering placements. Children and Family have been involved in the development of new practice standards for children in need, and in feeding back their views on the work undertaken by the Children and Families Wellbeing Service on how well they've heard and involved in the planning of work undertaken with their families. 92% of families held the view that they have either always or often felt listened to by their worker in a way that made them feel that their family was really understood. We also continue to support Cycle members, which is our County Youth Council, and 3 elected members of the Youth Parliament to progress their campaign activity on improving cancer care for young people, the environment and poverty. And finally, I'd just like to move on to performance. Over the last year across the Children and Families Department, we have remained strong, in particular around the delivery of our services to children and their families through targeted early help and children's social care. I would like to take this opportunity to thank staff across the department for their work over the past 18 months. They've worked tirelessly to support children and their families and showed some real innovation in their approach to delivering services over the pandemic. I would also like to thank all staff who work in schools across Leicestershire for keeping children learning and engaged in education over this difficult year. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you very much. Could I now call Mrs. Newton, please? Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you so much for that report, and I do welcome the strong performance across the Children and Families Department. But this council is actually facing, with other councils, is actually facing a deficit, especially on the young and children's departments, and I just wonder how big an impact this will have on service delivery. I understand the new service and funding arrangement put into place are complex and resource intensive, and this too can cause problems for delivery of service. And it comes at a time when SEND nationally is facing a financial crisis with a shortfall of annually of £2 billion. That's a heck of a lot of money, isn't it? This may mean that many more young people with special needs and complex needs are losing out and not being educated in the most appropriate setting. Indeed, I understand that nationally, numbers of children in SEND are not actually on a SEND plan. Many children are just falling through the net, but I hope this is not the case here in Leicestershire. I wonder if we could have some more information on the figures here in Leicestershire in terms of children on the EHP plan and the impact of that on service delivery. Can we also have some information on the shortfall in funding here in Leicestershire, as this too may also have an impact on our ability to deliver appropriate services to SEND children? And if there's any information on any relevant capital programmes associated with that. Also, research shows that there are many more children with special educational needs who actually just fall below that threshold which requires an EHP plan and may yet need an assessment. So how many children are out there that are not having the plans that they need? Once these children come through the system too, that too will add to our future funding pressures. If the authority and schools are indeed facing additional costs and simply can't find the resources to deal with any extra demand for plans, what are we going to do about that? How are we going to meet that need? There'll be costs, and there'll be an impact on school curriculums, etc. You may well need to get in touch with government, and I hope you will do, and ask them, will they make up any shortfall in the SEND budget? And ask them maybe to be reimbursed in terms of making up any extra money that we're out. It's so important that we deliver a proper and adequate SEND programme for these young people. We don't want them falling through the net because it will have an impact on their future lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any... Yes, please. Yes, Mr. Welch. Just looking around while we're waiting for Mr. Welch to arrive, I've noticed the light has gone down here. Is there anything we can do to have some lights on? Anybody? No? Okay, yes, when you're ready. Sorry for that.
Oh, that's fine,
I was
Chair.
just taking advantage of the gap.
I'd like to thank the Cabinet member for her report, and I particularly want to praise the work of our fostering service. I think they've done incredible work in very difficult times. Taking and recruiting our own foster carers is vital. It's vital because in the past we've relied heavily upon agency staff and agency workers. That is more expensive. So the other thing about having our own foster carers is that we can recruit specialist carers to deal with some very difficult families. So I think they've done brilliant work in difficult times, and well done to those staff.
Thank you. Could I call upon the lead member if you'd like to respond to those comments? Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Mrs Newton, Mr Welsh, for your comments. I think the leader's already addressed the deficit that you mentioned with the SEND budget, and I continue to lobby ministers to get the funding that we need to address that. It's not an easy task, but I will not give up, and I will continue to lobby ministers. Just on your question about any child that needs the support or care will get it, because I am fully behind the director that we will not let any child suffer. We will build the deficit up if we need to, but any child that needs support will get that support that they need. As to early help, those children that fall just below that threshold for statutory care, early help's a key priority for me. I think prevention is the key to what we do. If I can prevent a family from breaking up and keep them together and support them moving forward, that's going to cost us a lot less and be a lot better for that family and for that child than having statutory services. So for me, early help is the key, but getting funding for prevention is very difficult because there's no evidence to say how you've spent that money. So it is a difficult dilemma, but I continue to support that for early help. As to all the other information that you requested, all that information is brought regularly to the Scrutiny Commission, to the Social Care Panel that you're a member of, so all the performance and all that data that you asked for is always within those reports. So if there's anything specific that you do want to know, just email me in the meantime. I'll be very happy to provide that for you. And to Mr Welsh, thank you very much for acknowledging the work of our fosters carers. We couldn't do what we do, and there's been a recent example of our asylum seeker, Salman, who's went on to qualify as an architect. I mean, those foster carers have done an absolutely amazing job for him. He's a remarkable young man. But a lot of that is down to those foster carers and how they've nurtured him and brought him from the trauma he suffered and taught him to speak English, because he didn't speak a word of English when he was picked up on the motorway aged 12. So absolutely, we want to recruit as many foster carers as we want from whatever walks of life. And I am, plead with anyone that might have a slight interest in there to find out more. We're always willing to speak to you. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Could I now call the lead member for Equalities and Community Engagement and Rural Partnerships?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm very pleased to have this opportunity to introduce the annual report of work that has been carried out to support Leicestershire communities over the past financial year, for which I cannot take any credit because it was Mrs Richardson's portfolio and not mine. So when I've just given this debrief, Mrs Richardson will be coming to talk to you all to tell you how good the department is. It has been a year dominated by the COVID-19 pandemic, which has presented huge challenges both globally and locally. The pandemic has, however, also provided very many examples of positive community spirit, the willingness of people to volunteer, to help others, particularly those who are most vulnerable, and the value of what can be achieved from within our communities. The County Council has worked to support and complement community action and develop thriving communities where people of all ages, backgrounds and abilities participate and help each other. Some of the highlights of the report include the great success of the Leicestershire County Council Communities Fund in helping voluntary groups to manage the impacts of the pandemic and to continue to deliver services for vulnerable and disadvantaged people during the crisis. The work of the Leicestershire and Rutland Resilience Partnership in successfully coordinating the response to the pandemic and ongoing recovery work, and the award of the Defence Employer Recognition Scheme Gold Award to the County Council. I urge all members to take the opportunity to look at the annual report, which is available on the Leicestershire Communities website and on the members' portal. I'd now like to hand over to Mrs Richardson.
Thank you. Could I call Mrs Richardson, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Pam. Firstly, I really wish to commend the directors and the officers for all they've done this year through the pandemic. They've needed to be very flexible, they've been working virtually, and they've managed to keep a smile on their faces too. It shows the resilience we've had in-house. It's also been a time that communities have come together, and through assistance with the grant funding and the speed at which it was distributed, it enabled us to do the very best we could for communities. And it allowed us to make good connections with a number of organisations that were not previously on our radar. It's helped our communities to remain strong and resilient. Nearly £2.6 million was distributed, and the administration for officers was huge. The Council also received an award from Leicestershire Cares for this work. And this is all when I've had public turn round to me and say that, well, county staff were on furlough. Nothing of the sort. They've been working their socks off. A strategic volunteer advisory group was set up in response to the pandemic, and this ensured consistent messaging and support for volunteers. And we had a great response, supporting those that were shielding and vulnerable members of our communities. Voluntary Action Leicestershire received over 1,000 COVID volunteers, and they also recruited over 1,250 county volunteers to support the vaccination programme. The Leicestershire Rural Partnership has gone from strength to strength, working with the LEP and Rural Services Network. They've been working with the LEP to ensure the needs and priorities of rural communities are included in the Economic Recovery Action Plan. And it has also led on work regarding the natural capital for the county for inclusion into that strategy. The Business Recovery Fund was delivered over 5 months, £709,000, which safeguarded 234 jobs and will support the creation of another 94 new jobs. And after that, the team also supported Wombles groups with the distribution of equipment to ensure safety on the roadside. I was really pleased when we were awarded the Defence Employers Recognition Scheme Gold Award. We're one of only 17 employees in the East Midlands. We continue to support the Covenant and have been working with the Civil and Military Partnership Board to develop and deliver a regional action plan coordinating all the work that's been done across various organisations, charities, universities, local authorities. Consultation, although not as we previously knew it, has still taken place. We had a reduction of engagement quite understandably at the start of the pandemic. However, this has been improving since the autumn of 2020. Various focus groups have been run via video conferencing and using specialist software for interactive exhibition spaces. So we've been innovative in maintaining engagement throughout the pandemic. We're also aware that the move to digital has given us a better understanding of digital poverty, and we're carrying out some work on this with Loughborough University, and also doing additional work on how COVID has impacted on communities that may have not had their voices heard. The Equalities Challenge group has also undergone a refresh to focus on those areas that are within our control, and therefore areas where we have a responsibility to take action when required. And it's recognised that public engagement will be a key part in stabilising services following the pandemic and navigating some of the Council's priority areas, such as delivering our environment commitments. We must all learn from the pandemic, hold on to the community spirit and service, and ensure we, Leicestershire County Council, remain accessible for all our communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Could I now call Mr. Meyer, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the lead members and Mrs. Richardson for their speech. I think it's very pertinent that we are standing here today in a racecourse and not at County Hall because of what the pandemic has done. But I just wanted to praise Nick Rushton, Terry Island and Simon Galton, really. Right at the beginning of the pandemic, in the first few weeks, they set up the Communities Fund. It was £1 million when they initially set it up, but it was a lifeline for community groups and voluntary organisations at that time who saw their funding seized up really overnight. And I can tell you from the other side, as a trustee in one of the organisations that did benefit initially from the fund, that it did provide food for people that didn't have food because they'd lost the hours on their jobs contracts, so they didn't have any money. So we were able to provide food there. But it also kept the lights on for that voluntary organisation as well, because overnight their funding had dried up and they couldn't, 2 or 3 months down the line, they would have actually stopped as an organisation. And you'll be glad to know they're going strong and they're in constant contact with County Hall and officers there. And I think that's the relationship that was built from the Communities Funds. And following on from that, the volunteers as well. We were able to bring people from the communities into the organisation to help volunteer, to help run some of the services that otherwise we wouldn't have been able to provide. And I think that goes hand in hand. And before we did have a volunteers recognition scheme, I think, but maybe that's something that we resurrect back up as we get back into County Hall and get these volunteers county-wide recognised and thank them and allow them to be recognised in that way. Community engagement, there's a little bit on community engagement in the report, but I think we have to recognise the diversity of Leicestershire now. I think we've always recognised the diversity of Leicester City. But I look around after this county election, and it's nice to see some more faces from the BME community. But I think what we have to do is engage, and it's not just people from the BAME communities. And I think we have a lot, and I think this has been highlighted in the press recently. We have lots of people from Eastern European backgrounds living in our communities now. So we have to engage with those kind of people, see what kind of services and what kind of things that they want from their councils. And the final thing I want to pick up on was something that Mrs. Richardson said, which is digital poverty. A lot of students, a lot of pupils were homeworking for the past year and a half. In my division, people couldn't even afford their broadband bills, let alone a £500, £600 laptop or iPad. And it's maybe a suggestion that we put that soon we're going to be recycling our Surface Pros to get Lenovo Yogas, and I was thinking that if we could recycle those into the schools and communities where they're needed, that would be such a benefit to those communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to invite the lead member back to respond to the comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those comments. And I do agree with you, as I was one of those volunteers. I went to the vaccine centre, and I was working there, and it was not as daunting as I first thought it might be. But you know, people were coming in genuinely concerned. Some people absolutely petrified, and it was nice to be able to support those people to get the jabs and get them one step further to returning to some form of normality. I do agree with you about recognising diversity more in the county. The county has changed a lot. I know when I arrived in Leicestershire in 1973, seems a long time ago now, in our town, Melton Mowbray, there was a very large population of Indian people who, or most of them, like me, worked for Pedigree Pet Foods. But over the years, they've disappeared. Some of their grandchildren are still living in Melton, but a lot of them either went back to India or went to America when they retired from work. But we've always had a Polish community, but that Polish community has grown. And also we've got some of the other Eastern European communities as well. Digital poverty, yes, I agree with you. It is very serious for lots of people. And certainly I will take forward your idea about recycling our Surface Pros. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. I'd like to now call the lead member for Highways and Transport, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm very pleased to advise members that the Cabinet approved a new Members' Highway Fund at the meeting on the 22nd of June. The fund will provide each member with a budget of £25,000 to use on small-scale highway and environmental improvement works in their own divisions. We recognise how important small-scale highway works can be to our communities, and therefore we have allocated an additional £5 million to cover a range of highway improvement works, including community speed management, gullies and drainage works, public rights-of-way works, signing and lining maintenance. The Members' Highway Fund is one initiative to be funded from this additional money. Over the next couple of months, a dedicated project manager will contact each member directly to discuss the available options and offer support and guidance. We will also provide examples of effective and affordable scheme options with estimated costings and timescales for delivery to help members consider how they want to spend their allocation. Such examples will include the provision of village gateway measures, flashing speed signs, vegetation clearing and minor improvements to roads and footways. Officers will work with members to get the proposals developed over the next few months so that measures can be delivered in this financial year, and the team will be working hard to put in place guidance and processes to support members. An all-member briefing has been arranged for the 13th of July, where members can come to, and I hope every member does attend that meeting, to get details on this initiative, and the application process at that time will be available. I'm so pleased that we have actually put this forward for members because we all know that that is our bread and butter complaints on highways, that roads need potholes filling. We do very well at pothole filling from this council. We are very high regarded across the country for our roads, and in fact we're the #1 for our major roads across the whole of the country. However, what I will say, that bread and butter is the things that come to you from your residents, and residents complain of overgrown hedgerows, weeds and various things. We want to get these sorted, and we want to give you the tools to get your things, your division sorted how you want to sort it. So I'm really pleased that this fund is available to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I now call Mr Mullaney, please?
Mr. Gold.
Mr Gold.
Thank you to Mr O'Shea for this report, and in principle we welcome the £25,000 of money for members to spend on highways improvements in their own divisions. Certainly in my division there are many issues to do with pavement repairs, flooding problems, speeding problems and many other highways issues that need resolving, and I'm sure that travelling in every other division in the county there are every other county seat has issues that need resolving. What I would say though is that £25,000 is probably only going to account for 1 or 2 of those problems in each of our patches, and I think all of us could probably spend that money 10, 20, 30 times over in terms of improving the highways in our areas. So what I would say is, whilst I welcome the extra £25,000 for each member, what I would hope doesn't happen is that when we report issues in our patches, the automatic response comes back, oh, we've got this £25,000 to deal with it, because the reality is we could spend that many times over with all the problems in our divisions. So it really does come back really to the fair funding again, that there is millions of pounds of gap in spending in terms of the highways, and whilst we welcome this 25,000 each and the 5 million overall, the reality is it's very unlikely to meet all the highways problems that there are across the county, and it's another reason why we have to keep that link for the fair funding and the extra finances for the county. So while we welcome the £25,000, we really don't want to get to a situation where the immediate response to every complaint is, oh, well, you've got this £25,000 of funding, because it just won't cover the problems that any member has in their county seats on highways issues.
Thank you very much. Could I now call Mr Galton, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr Chairman, and yes, it is a nice venue, and not as far to come for members from the south this time as it was to Loughborough. I just wanted to pick up on this fund because it is welcome. It is something that members have been asking for right across the groups, how we can actually address some of these issues and problems. And I know it's only funding for this year, and I hope it will be possible for it to continue into future years. But I do think we need to pick up on the point that Mr Mullaney made, and I'd like to just mention as a rural member, I have around 28 parishes, mixture of parish councils and smaller parish meetings. I represent one of the largest geographical areas in the county, and I know there'll be a lot of requests and demand for this money. In fact, officers have already contacted parish councils, I understand, to say this is going to be available. So parishes are already going to be thinking about how they can lobby members to access some of this money. So, you know, just do the maths on that. 28 parish councils, 25,000. It's not going to be a lot for each parish were a member to try and say, well, we'd like to do something in every parish. That's just not going to be possible. There is going to have to be some prioritisation, some kind of system. So, yeah, welcome this, but I do think it's important we don't run away with this is going to be a solution to the very, very big and long problem of underfunding Leicestershire highways. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I now call Mr Rushton, please?
Just a couple of brief words. So obviously we've just fought an election, as you know, and we did exceedingly well. Some of you won't be so happy about that, but that's tough luck. In our manifesto, we pledged to protect the vulnerable, and we will continue to protect the vulnerable going forward. But our other manifesto commitment was to try and find money for what we call, and Ozzy rightly referred to them, bread and butter issues. And I tell my group, and my group tell me, that any spare money we get, and we don't seem to get a lot, but any spare money we get, we do want to divert back into the bread and butter issues that everybody picks up. And nearly all my side have got blooming parish councils. I mean, Simon, we tried to take your seat off you so you didn't have to bother with all those parish councils, but unfortunately our candidate was not quite successful enough. But we've all got loads of parish councils. It will be difficult for members to prioritise how you're going to spend this 25,000. There will be a dedicated officer to help you. I've already had 5 inquiries, and I think they're 200-odd thousand. I would just estimate them myself. So we will try and put more money into highways and transportation as and when we get it. We know that the minor roads and the pavements and the hedges have suffered since the financial crisis, and we've shoveled money, and we have, into adults and children. We have not. There's been no moans from my group as the administration about putting money into adults and children, but we have got to find money as and when it's available to start rolling back the, not cuts, but not growth. You know, it's suffered from inflation. We do need to put some money back into these issues, because that is what a lot of our voters moan about. As leader, I probably get hardly any complaints about adults and children. Okay, I've got good cabinet members who deal with them, but I get loads of complaints and questions about bread and butter issues, and we have really got to focus on the bread and butter issues. Otherwise, voters in some of the deeply rural areas, say like where my son represents, that Ivan used to represent, say, well, we pay our taxes the same as they do in, say, the middle of Loughborough, but we get no services whatsoever. And now we do need to address those sort of issues with the voters, otherwise we'll lose their confidence. And also I entirely agree, Michael, that if I hear that officers are saying to members that this issue should be taken out of their 25,000, I will be exceedingly cross. This is for members' issues, and I will say to Ozzy that he must not let the people in there say, oh, we're not going to do it, you've got your own money, you do it. So Ozzy will reassure me on that matter when he finishes off. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to call Mr. Meyer now, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Labour Group welcomes this pot of money as well. We don't, we're realistic. It's not going to stretch and solve all our issues, but it's a step in the right direction. I just wanted to point out one thing, that highways officers have been really good during the pandemic. They've always responded on any emails I've sent and any complaints that I might have had that residents have forwarded to me. Yes, it's a bread and butter issue, but I just think it's an everyday issue. Our emails are full with these kind of things. But it's important that the perception that the public have of this pot of money is realistic as well. And I think if officers are referring the public to their county councillors for certain issues, we're not going to be able to solve them all. I think there's 52, 55 councillors here. If there's one officer or 2 officers dedicated to it, that we're going to use up all their time on this resource. The other thing I'd like to say is that actually county highways have suffered massive cuts in the last 10 years, and this is just a drop in the ocean of trying to rectify what has gone before. I don't think we're going to get there with this pot of money, but we will try. But it'll be interesting on the 13th of July to see what the officers tell us and how they prioritise things and how they cost things up. Because certainly I don't know how much it's going to cost to put a sign up, for example, maybe a speeding sign, or to do a bit of extra gutterage or drainage. So it'll be interesting to see how much of that we can do. But what will be interesting is this time next year to see actually how much of that money we've spent and what the benefits have been to our divisions and the county as a whole. So reflecting back, it's exciting that we do have this money that we can spend as councillors, because we don't get any money really, let's be honest. So we'll just see how we spend it and how wise we are in spending it. I don't think we'll be as wise as officers, but 25,000 might get a bypass in central Loughborough.
Thank you. Call Mr. Parton now, please. Please, thank you.
I think for some context, on Monday, a couple of county councillors attended the Charnwood Road Safety Network, and it was interesting to see what parish councillors and members of the public that attend that Road Safety Committee thought. And actually, the biggest issue that came out there was speeding. Now, we at the Charnwood Road Safety Committee and probably other panels across the county, we're very fortunate to have Inspector Graham Compton of Leicestershire Police. He's an authority on road safety and a real sort of mentor for those of us that take road safety passionately. And it was really interesting to hear that actually from his side, from the police's side, the big issue was actually the amount of road traffic accidents that have happened. He gave some statistic, which sadly is not in my notebook, but approximately, so these could be the wrong figures, the traffic levels on average across the whole of 2020 were down by about 16%, but incidents that the police and the fire brigade were called to were up by about 20%. So there's two reasons for that. One is people are driving faster and more recklessly because there's less cars on the road. But it could also be just poorer driving standards. So it's worth to separate out the issues. What we're looking to do here is to thwart speeding, but we're also looking to improve the infrastructure. We can't blame all of the issues on the fact that maybe highways through government funding has suffered. I think we actually have to consider that the traffic that does use the road has unfortunately a minority have not used it appropriately, and therefore we now face these issues that the public are quite rightly flagging up. But we'll do what we can with this money, and I will say that there's a lot of officers in highways that I've dealt with over the last few years, and often I'll get very detailed and technical responses back that show their expertise. Often the answer is not what one wanted, but at least it does show that they have the real technical expertise and knowledge of the areas. We can sometimes think, can't we, that we know our areas better than anybody else, but when you get a detailed email back from a transportation engineer or technician or a traffic modeller that shows they're sympathetic to the issue and that the matter's not closed and they'll revisit it, that does give some reassurance. But we need to separate out the issues from the issue that the fire brigade and the police are raising, that you know, the traffic incidents are up, as well as sadly the cases of the fatal four. There's a huge amount of people driving under the influence of drugs and drink now, but also the fact of being realistic of what we can do with our money and what we can do with our general funds in the Highways and Environment Department.
Thank you. Could I now, I think, finally call Mr. Bray, please? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I just want to add my welcome to this scheme. I think it is useful. I also wanted to welcome Ozzy to his post. Ozzy and I have been served on Hinkley Bosworth together for a long time, and we've always got on reasonably well, and I know he'll do a good job. So welcome to Ozzy in the post. I just wanted to agree with the point that Mr. Mear made. I think it would be quite useful in the briefing, or very soon after the briefing, for us to have an idea of some of the costings about how much certain things would cost. So it gives us an idea about how we can plan to spend that money. And I don't want to be a killjoy, but it is part of our job to be a killjoy. But many of the problems that have been mentioned by Nick and other members are problems of our own making. You know, this county council has cut back over the years the grass cutting. It has cut back the roads maintenance problems. It's cut back the gully clearing, for example. So therefore, you know, whilst I welcome what's in the Conservative manifesto about resolving some of these problems and undoing some of these problems. We are actually only undoing or beginning to scratch the surface of undoing some of the problems that the Conservatives have created over the years through their highways budget managing.
Thank you. Right, I will now call Mr O'Shea then to respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mullaney, for your comments. And I know it won't go as far as you want it to go, and we can't build highways out of £25,000, but it will go a long way to actually help you in your division. And I want to clarify, to help you put your projects forward in your division. The general maintenance of the highways will come out of the highways budget, of which we've put an extra £5 million in. So just to make you, rest assured that the actual projects that we want you to do in your divisions is what you will put forward, and hopefully on the briefing you'll get that information and you'll be happy with that. We don't particularly want to, to be there telling you that we're going to be doing, give you an email back to say take it out of your actually allowance. So no, look at your projects, look at something that's specific to your areas. And I appreciate, Mr Galton, you've got many parishes all vying for your 25,000, but it'll go. I know it won't go a long way with all the parishes that you've got, but it will go some ways to helping the communities that you represent. I thank Mr Mayor for your comments, and certainly we will be looking to help members forward with the projects that they want. We've got dedicated officers that we're appointing to do this, and we're here to help you. We want to make your life better as well with your communities, so that you can actually go back and say, look, I can do this for you. Mr Parton, speeding. Well, speeding is an ongoing problem, and it has increased during the pandemic with the roads being lighter. This council has actually put together average speed cameras in certain locations across the county, and with this extra money we'll be looking to put average speed cameras in other locations. We accept that speeding is a problem nationally and locally, and we want to do everything we can to eradicate it. We will never eradicate it by the problems that we have people that will never learn. And as a former police officer, I can say to you that you can catch the same person 2 or 3 times on the same road. Once you've booked them the first day, they'll be there the next day still speeding. They won't learn the lesson. Other people, though, it jots their memory and they will not speed. And the majority of people that have actually taken the course for speeding do realise the problem and learn their lesson. I will work closely with the police. I will work closely with the Road Safety Partnership to make sure that this council has a commitment with the police to work on speeding. So anything I can do personally to help members during my term as the Cabinet Member, I want to. And thank you for your comments, Mr Bray. It's always been a pleasure working with yourself at Inkley.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Before we move on to item 6, I'd like to thank the portfolio holders and all those who've contributed to that debate this afternoon. It has been quite a journey of discovery and understanding, and it's good for the ordinary member who's not got those knowledge and information to be able to understand some of the processes that's actually happening and going forward. So I thank portfolio holders, I think all the members who contributed. I think that was very successful. Can I now turn to agenda item number 6, report from the Scrutiny Commission. That's pages 41 to 42. Principal speakers, the Leader of the Opposition, Mr Mullaney, and the Leader of the Council, Mr Rushton. Could I call Mr Mullaney, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I'm pleased to introduce the Overview and Scrutiny Annual Report for 2020-2021. Obviously, this is the work of last year's committee that was chaired by Simon Galton, and I thank him for all the excellent work he did to produce this report, and all the other commissioners as well. Though I was not chair of the Commission during this period, I think the report demonstrates the extent of the excellent work undertaken by all scrutiny bodies during a most challenging year. Despite the restrictions put in place as a result of COVID and the need to hold meetings remotely, Scrutiny has continued to hold the Cabinet to account and closely monitor the Council's budget and service performance throughout. In particular, through scrutiny, members have been able to consider and challenge each department's COVID response and recovery plans on a regular basis to ensure that the Council has continued to meet the changing needs of local residents. Looking forward, the longer-term impact of COVID on Council services and its finances will continue to be a key focus for all our committees, and we will seek to better understand the impact of COVID has had on service users and local communities to ensure that we can build back better for the future. I would like to take this opportunity to thank my predecessor, Simon Galton, who was chairman of the Scrutiny Committee for 12 years, taking on the role in 2009. Simon has led the work of the Commission with an inclusive and apolitical approach that has ensured that scrutiny here in Leicestershire has been held in high regard both internally and in external assessments as well. Simon has been instrumental in developing guides and protocols for conducting scrutiny, which still operate today, and I'm pleased that he's continuing to play a key role as a member of the Scrutiny Commission. Also, thank you to Mrs Page for her work as Vice Chairman, to Mr Bedford for his work as a Commissioner and the whole committee, and also thank you to Dr Einan for her time as a Commissioner and for her input over the past few years as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I call Mrs Page to second that, please? Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. This indeed has been a very challenging time for all, but I'm pleased that the work of scrutiny has continued throughout, unaffected. The annual report does not detail all the work of the Commission and each overview and scrutiny committee has undertaken, but it provides a useful overview of some of the highlights. I'm proud of the work and the achievement, and I wish to thank all the members and the officers that have taken part to support the work of scrutiny, despite all the challenges we have faced this year. I also welcome the unprecedented level of public involvement, with a record number of questions having been asked by residents and members. Please carry on. I hope that this continues to ensure the Council is able to respond to all the needs of our communities, in particular at this time, those who have been hit very hard by COVID. It is important that we hear those messages so that the Council is able to respond and protect those most vulnerable in our society. As scrutiny, we remain your critical friend, and I would like to conclude by saying a big thank you to Simon Galton for all his hard work and approach to scrutiny. He's never been thanked this much. It has been a pleasure to work alongside him to ensure scrutiny has been able to provide that critical, independent friend, challenge which I think adds value to all the Council's work. I also would like to give thanks to Dr Einan for her input as a Scrutiny Commissioner, and to Mr Bedford, who is now a lead member for COVID recovery and ways of working. I'm looking forward to the year ahead and working with all the new members. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I second the report.
Thank you. Could I now call Mr Rushton, please?
Only a few brief remarks, Chairman. Can I formally thank all my members who have served on scrutiny over the past year. I know it's been difficult, but I think you've done a damn good job, and can also place on record my thanks to the members who served on scrutiny who are no longer with us, either lost their seats or didn't choose to stand. Can I also pledge again that the administration does take scrutiny seriously. We've always taken scrutiny seriously. We've always resourced it properly. And to show our commitment, we've always invited the scrutiny commissioners to our private cabinet briefings. So scrutiny is represented in all the decisions we make. I thank them as well for keeping us on our toes. They do help us where we are prone to sometimes making mistakes. It's good to be pulled up by my own side at scrutiny before it gets here, to be pulled up by the opposition. So I thank them for their work, and we will continue to resource it properly and respect their opinions.
Thank you. Could I now call Mrs. Hack, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to thank, on behalf of the Labour Group, the Scrutiny Commission for the work that's been done in scrutiny for the past year. I'd also like to pass on our thanks to Simon for the work that he's done over a long period of time in the role of Chair. I think it's encouraged and welcome that the work of scrutiny has continued uninterrupted with the delays created by COVID, and I thank the officers for the work that's gone in to make sure that happens. I think also welcome the fact that as somebody who can't attend all the meetings, you're able to join hybrid has actually made a massive difference in terms of engaging and understanding other portfolios. I think the work of Scrutiny Commission, as mentioned in the report and by Rosita Page, enabled the voice of the concerns of the public with an increase of public engagement, and I would obviously want to welcome this to continue. This has certainly been felt in my own in the scrutiny that I attend, which is health and joint health, the panel obviously that I sit on. The report quite rightly does focus on each area, the impacts that's been felt of the pandemic, not only just in public health, the NHS, but also through our community, the population, including jobs, social care, and the impact it's had on our children. And the range of topics is so much more than the pandemic. And I think one of the things that's really useful with the Commission's report, which I thank them for it gives such a great insight to the breadth of work that's done through all of the scrutiny panels. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Could I now call Mr. Richardson, please?
Thank you, Chair. The leader gave a very sobering figure at the start of today, about 2,400 people having passed away in the county with COVID. And I just reflect as Chairman of Adults and Communities how much worse it might have been but for the hard work and dedication of our team. And I say that in two ways, not just for the work they did during COVID, but for the foresight the team had going back several years now during my time on the committee, when their entire policy and thrust was to keep vulnerable people in their own homes for as long as possible. And I think that policy and the work they've done on that, I just wanted to highlight at this time, because I think it can get missed, and it is a backward-looking report, I appreciate, but the sheer work they've done on supporting people in their own homes, the work they did in making sure that people had the right PPE. I've had the privilege of going out with our officers to look at the work they do in care homes, in supporting care homes, in how well they run, how well they look after the people in them. And I think this county should be very, very impressed and privileged by the work our team have done by keeping those people in. You know, I know when we first looked at the target operating model, for instance, that people said this was to save money. It was never about saving money, it was about providing a better service, which I think the figures have shown, that those people have better, more rewarding lives, being looked after in their own homes. They stay healthier for longer and they stay fitter for longer. So I think that needs to be recognised. But moving forward, I think we should all be excited that the team haven't just stopped now. And I had to bring a little paper out with the 3 words on it because I always forget them. Technology-enabled care, I think, is something we're now moving into, working with another authority. And I think this just goes to show that the team are never stopping at looking how to make people's lives better, perhaps as they get into advanced years or perhaps where they have medical conditions that require support. So as Chairman of Adults Communities Overview, I just would like to say a great big thank you to the staff, but also recognise the decisions that have been made by this council in making sure that we protect the most vulnerable in our society. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes, could I call Mr. Mullaney now to respond? Thank you very much.
Just to say thank you to Mrs. Hack, Mr. Rushton and Mr. Richardson for their positive comments about the work of the Scrutiny Commission, and going forward the next year will be a very important year as we emerge from COVID. in terms of the work of scrutiny. So I look forward to high quality scrutiny carrying on across the county. Thank you.
Yeah. Could I now just ask that we all note the report and it's agreed? Agreed? Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. We now move on to agenda item number 7, report from the Constitution Committee. That's pages 45 to 52. The principal speaker will be Chairman Mr N Rushton. The second spokesperson will be Mr Mullaney. Thank you, Mr Rushton.
Thank you, Chairman. I normally wouldn't speak a lot about these and just stand here and move them, but today I think it does merit a little bit more. Although not a manifesto commitment to split the highways and transportation scrutiny, it does reflect what we pledged in the manifesto, that we will prioritise the green agenda and highways and transportation, as Ozzy refers to them, the bread and butter issues. So this will help us deliver on the manifesto commitment, and also it'll show in who we've chosen to chair one of them. So Trevor, ex-cabinet member, will chair the new committee, and so he knows where the bodies are buried. And of course we've got a new guy, Mark Frisbee, who will be his vice chair. Mark is a new member, so he'll bring a fresh set of eyes to scrutiny, and I thank him for stepping up to the plate. And then on the other scrutiny body, the chair will be Tony Gillard, another old hand who knows the ropes, and Tony's vice chair will be another new guy, Keith Merry, who certainly is a very, very hard-working local councillor, and I thank him for stepping up to the plate and taking the role. So just to reinforce that this does reflect our manifesto commitment. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I now call Mrs Taylor to second that, please?
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I'm very happy to second this motion. I think it really shows that this council and this leadership team is committed to environment and climate change, what I think is really important at the moment, so I welcome this scrutiny change.
Thank you very much. Mr Mullaney, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. So in principle we welcome the creation of the new committee, which highlights the importance of dealing with the huge challenge of climate change that Leicestershire, the rest of the country and the world will face in future years. So we welcome that. The only slight reservation we have is it does say at the back the additional amendment to do with councillors shouldn't speak as representatives of their boroughs and district councillors on scrutiny commissions. They should only speak as representative county councils. We've had this debate at full council before, I know, and it has been changed to that at full council. My own view is that I don't think it's the kind of thing that really needs to be codified in the Constitution, and so I'm sceptical about the need to put that in the amendments. But in terms of the overall creation of the new committee, we would agree with that and the importance of emphasising climate change issues.
Thank you. Is nobody else wishes to speak before Mr Rushton rises? No, thank you. It's yours, Mr Rushton.
I note what Michael says, but we've always had this policy, and we've got to be careful. We're all either, I'm a triple hatter. You know, you've got to be careful where you are. You know, 85% of us are dual hatters. We just need to try and ensure that when you're here, you're a county councillor. When you go back to Hinkley Bosworth, well, you're not the leader, Stuart's the leader, but we've just got to be careful that we don't get our roles mixed up, because we all serve on many different bodies, many different districts, parishes, you know, God knows what when you're elected, there's so many things to go on. So it's just to make sure that you speak and act as a county councillor. And when you're here, you speak, act and vote as a county councillor. That is what it seeks to reinforce, and you'll just have to put up with it, Michael.
Right. Right, thank you very much, Mr Rushton. Right, now we need to move to agree and approve this proposal this afternoon. Can I have an indication of your approval for that? Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Right, we move on now to the Corporate Governance Committee. That's the principal speaker, Mr T Barclay, and the Liberal Democrat spokesman, Mr B Bolter. Mr Barclay, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is a fairly straightforward report, as outlined in Appendix A. I move that the proposed amendments to the contract procedures rules set out in Appendix A to the report of the Corporate Governance Committee be approved.
Thank you. Very succinct. Thank you very much for your contribution. Could I now call Mr Richardson, please?
I'll do it from here if I may, Chairman.
No, I'd prefer you to do it so everybody can hear properly. It's important. Thank you.
I have great pleasure in seconding the motion, Mr Chair.
Right. Thank you. Okay, a little... okay, thank you for that. Right, now I'd like to call Mr Bolter, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Like everybody else, I'll keep it nice and brief. Time is getting on. I know one people wants to get away for the football. Contract procedure rules, pages 53 to 82, come into force the 30th of July. I'm very pleased to see the bit included about the consider local suppliers for the value of 5 to 25,000 contracts. It's very important we support local community. If it helps small businesses to get going, it helps all the people round about we represent. So I'm very pleased that's in the report. I hope we can action that as soon as possible, get some local suppliers on board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Check it's all agreed.
Yeah. No other speakers? Thank you very much. That was quite quick. Thank you. Can I now confirm that we agree that recommendation? Can I have a show of hands, please? Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Right, agenda item number 9 to appoint members of the Highways and Transport Overview and Scrutiny Committee and the Environment and Climate Changes Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I invite Mr Shepherd to move the motion, please, and I will call Mr Charlesworth to second.
Thank you, Chairman. This is nearly as Mr Barclay succinct, but not, I'm afraid, quite so much. I move that the membership of the Highways and Transport Overview and Scrutiny Committee and the Environment and Climate Change Overview and Scrutiny Committee, as set out below, be approved. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Yes, so we've had some long debates and now we're moving into the rapid towards the end as we move on. Right, Mr Charlesworth, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome to everybody to Oban Wigston. It's nice to be here. I hope you're all well. It is a lovely view. I thought if I'm going to have the trouble of coming up here to second it, I'd make it worth my while. So,
yeah, okay. Thank you. Right, okay. I was sitting back on my chair, Ms Charlesworth, expecting more comments, but then you withdrew. Okay, thank you for that. Is there anybody else wishing to speak on that? No? Can I confirm then that we approve that as our body? Yes, can I have your hands please so I can see and understand? Yes, thank you very much. Excellent, thank you. Right, we now move to item number 10, which is our notice of motion and our last piece of work this afternoon. With the consent of the Council, I now invite Mrs Hack to move the amended motion of the order paper with Mr O'Shea, who will second. Please raise your hands if you wish to speak after the initial speakers have spoken. Right, could I call Mrs Hack, please? Thank you.
Well, I've been busy today, haven't I? Sorry, I haven't spoken to you as much in a council meeting before. So I'm obviously happy to propose the motion as read. The focus of the motion is around improving the local environment in and around the highway, aiming to capture many of the elements of work already supported by this authority into a set of actions. And actually, I think a lot of the agenda today, we've covered quite a bit of this, and so it's almost perfect timing. In the last 15 months, I'm sure we'll all agree it's been like no other. This has meant we've spent more time locally, exploring our environment, probably a little less time, hopefully, in our cars, more time walking, cycling, and enjoying the beautiful Leicestershire countryside and the view. Taking care of the natural environment in and around the roadside will pay dividend in the long term, not only by helping to improve our air quality, but also in realising the strategy around active travel. Just last week, Ozzy O'Shea, the lead for Highways, who will second the motion, stated in a press release, we're committed to supporting more people to make sustainable active travel choices. Quite often our efforts to support people out of their cars and onto their bikes or walking is hindered by the maintenance of our roadsides. It's not unusual to see pavements lifted from routes, bridleways and walkways, sometimes completely overgrown and some poorly maintained. With regards to safety and public safety, one area that comes up time and time again is lighting. As a woman who runs regularly in Leicestershire, feeling safe is something my running friends and we often talk about. I was only out the other day and I met an old work colleague and she was running what she called her safety route. These safety concerns will equally apply to men and young people, whether they're walking or cycling. However, overgrown trees, poor lighting and poor layouts will all have a factor. In my division, where the pavement has quite sensibly been taken away from the main roadside near Foss Park, it diverts away from the roadside into what I can only describe as a tree tunnel and is generally overgrown all year. Safer streets and having safer streets is so important to get out of our aspirations to get more people out of their cars and back onto their feet. In addition, there are risks that unless maintained, the roadside becomes a danger to all. On Monday, just this week, I was driving my son to school and there was a traffic light completely obscured by trees at the Desford Crossroads. You know how busy that is. And I'm sure we'll have loads of examples of those across our divisions. This motion notes the need to maintain the highway network to a high standard, including footways and cycleways. This also has to be balanced by an opportunity to maintain the roadside to maximise biodiversity and consider the tree management strategy. One area the authorities committed significant resources to recently also is the work of the volunteer Little Wombles, and for which I'm grateful. And one of the elements of the motion is a nod to the work of the Wombles and beyond. There isn't one group letter pick that I've attended across the county, and frequently on my solo Wombles do I not come across a stray piece of the highway's litter. Whether it's an A-frame sign, a row-grown sign, cones or pieces of cones, it's all out there, you only have to look. I appreciate not all of these are used by our highways teams, but it's important, as outlined in the motion, to engage with our partners to keep the roadside as tidy as possible, because that aids safety. In addition, it's important to consider the money that we spend on highways equipment, and effective strategies to only hold what is needed rather than have it placed permanently on the roadside has got to be beneficial not only to our pocket but for environmental waste too. The removal of highways clutter will help to also create those safe spaces I talked about earlier. Thank you so much for your time in considering the motion, and hopefully you'll support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Could I call Mr O'Shea, please, to second? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'll second the motion, and if I can just explain that our officers do a lot for this council, and I'm very proud of the officers in the highway department. They do an extremely good job and have done a real good job during the last part of the pandemic. They've done a great job all through the year. What I will say, though, to Mrs Hatt, yes, we do see road signs that have been left. I often ring in and say, you know, after work, we need them removing. So our officers are committed to actually working with districts and with the utility companies to remove those signs. And we are committed to actually, as you know, as we said earlier on, to cutting the hedgerow back and making the footpaths a lot safer, because like yourself, I've been out a lot during the pandemic, where I wouldn't do before, a lot of walking in the countryside, and it is noticeable that the growth has grown. And over the weather we've had over the last few weeks, with sun and rain, we've had a hell of a spurt on, but officers are doing their best to clear the paths. Thank you. I'm very happy to second the motion.
Thank you very much. Any members indicating wishing to comment on that? Mr Mullaney, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Many thanks to Amanda Hack for bringing forward this motion, which we support. We agree with the content of the motion, in particular the need to ensure improved safety for people when walking the streets at night through adequate lighting to make people feel more confident going out in the evenings, the need to make junctions more tidier and safer and to avoid the problems of foliage over damaging visibility at dangerous crossroads, and the need to collect up signage and other things that are on the highways as well, and to have a more tidy highway. So overall, we agree entirely with the motion. I did notice that on the original agenda, there was a commitment to having a considerate highways charter, which I gather was withdrawn after the requests from the administration. I'm disappointed that's been removed because I think it would have made the motion stronger and would have had more concrete commitments to it. But other than that, we support the motion and will vote for it today. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Now, Mrs. Hack, you have the right of reply. You're not. You're happy. Right, okay. I will now put this to the vote. That motion, please. Those in favour, can you all indicate and let me see the hands up so I can see everybody? Thank you all. That's unanimously carried. Thank you. That, members, is our final act of work this afternoon. I want to thank you all for your attendance, and particularly those who've joined in debates and made this a very enjoyable meeting. It's been different because we're not where we like to be, but I think this has been very good and a very successful full council meeting, and I wish you all well and a very safe journey home, and look forward to seeing you all in September, if not before. Many thanks. Thank you very much indeed. I declare the meeting closed.